Well, welcome. I'm Chris Danish, your host at Voices of Women, and I'm also the founder of Women of Wisdom Foundation and also the founder of the Women of Wisdom Conference, and we've been putting on conferences for the past 28 years in Seattle, Washington. And I'm excited. My guest today actually was a presenter several years back at our conference, Cyndi Dale, so we're going to be talking with her. She is an internationally renowned author, speaker, healer, and business consultant, and the author of 27 books about energy healing, energy medicine, intuition, and spirituality. She has worked with over 70,000 clients and has presented hundreds of seminars and workshops around the world, across the Americas, Russia, England, Wales, Amsterdam, Iceland, Costa Rica, Belize, Morocco, Peru, China. And she's published in 17 languages. So very well accomplished. She holds a 5th degree Reiki certificate, and she currently teaches a certificate level program at Normandale College in Minneapolis, Minnesota, through which adult students earn an accredited certificate in energy medicine. She also teaches a year-long apprenticeship program through her own company, Essential Energy, to develop your natural, intuitive, and healing gifts. She teaches locally and worldwide courses in energy medicine and spiritual healing. One of her books that she's well known for is the winner of 4 internationally recognized publishers awards, is The Subtle Body Encyclopedia of Your Energetic Anatomy. I don't know how to say that. Anatomy.
Anatomy.
Okay.
Y'all have one of those, an anatomy.
Yeah. Some of her recent books include Awaken Clairvoyant Energy, The Little Book of Chakras, Subtle Energy Techniques, Llewellyn's Complete Book of Chakras. It's the largest compendium of chakra knowledge ever produced. And then she has a new book out this month, July 2020, Energy Healing for Trauma, Stress, and Chronic Conditions. So we're going to be talking today about energy healing for crippling fear. We are so going through this right now with the pandemic, and even Black Lives Matter, and it's just kind of a very chaotic time. And so it's a good time to be in fear. No, we don't. We want to learn how to deal with our fears and not succumb to them and overrun our lives with it. So a lot of people dealing with death in their families or unemployment. There's so much going on. And so Cyndi's here today to help us through this, give us some energetic concepts and tools on how to deal with fear. So welcome, Cyndi. I'm going to hand you over to talk about the benefits of healthy fear.
Thank you, Chris. And it is a really timely topic that wasn't planned, by the way. Maybe some super consciousness decided this is the month the book needs to come out. But back when I got the proofs in April, we were already in lockdown. And my editor said, you might want to add some additional pages about COVID and pandemic and this and that, and how to help yourself through this type of fear, virus fear, fear of each other. So I think it's a really timely book. And we're always faced with fear. I mean, when you look at it, when we were cave people and there were dinosaurs and saber-toothed tigers, or I remember going to my very first job, I was terrified. I was terrified that, I wasn't going to tie the tie the right way. And so fear isn't bad. It's only dysfunctional when it goes too far or when it's old, because we want to be in touch with healthy fear. So I like to call healthy fear a message from the body. And it's an uncanny, intuitive instruction for our body that says there's something to be scared of. So if we're supposed to be scared of something like a bullet, coming at us, or maybe there's a certain grocery store where nobody wears their masks, or whatever it is that we're dealing with, we need to feel scared. We need to either step forward, step backward, or step to the side. So that's what healthy fear can do for us. It can move us from a place of danger or perceived danger to safety. So we need to pay attention to that kind of a fear.
Right. And I mean, there's a natural fear of death. I mean, if, with this COVID-19, and if you're sick, there's a natural fear of, how am I going to deal with this illness, and how to work that in a positive way? Like, so you're not, because adding the fear into that could even make your sickness, I would imagine, you can talk about this, have worse symptoms.
It does, because there's studies that show when you hold a lot of terror, fear, abandonment, anger, rage, etc. in your heart, when that's what you form yourself around, your bodily health decreases. You get stuck in the body's stress response, and if you do get sick, you're going to get sicker. And you're going to be more vulnerable to not just something like COVID, but the common cold or the flu or making mistakes. It's I think about when I'm in fear or terror, I don't even drive very well. I don't make wise decisions. It's really easy to make a mistake at work, and some of us are already nervous about the workplace if we still have a workplace to go to. So I think we've got to contain the fear and separate out what's the healthy part, what do we need to do to be safe, versus when are we going over the edge. And it's really easy to go over the edge when a lot of other people are over the edge, because we actually just pick up their fear. I mean, we're open systems. We don't start and end at the skin. If you had a major feeling right now, I'd probably feel it, and everybody else would too, because it's communicable. Energy is communicable. Feelings they blossom, they move, they spread. So it's important that we know we're responding to a real fear, like something we can do something about, versus that we're sort of in the shadow lands and it's mushrooming into something not safe for us.
So I understand that you have, because in your book, you have a lot of techniques. And so perhaps you can share one about finding and following your healthy fear. What do you suggest for people?
Well, it's always good to get a little quiet if you're feeling fear. Now, I know that's hard to do if you're in the middle of the rat race, or you have toddlers all over the place, or, like sometimes it's hard to take a moment when you start to feel scared, but we still need to, even a breath. So I like to train myself that if I just take one deep breath, I can go into sort of a pause and give myself a little space, almost like samadhi, or you're expanding time, so that moment counts more than it does. And then I like to ask whatever my guidance is, whatever somebody's guidance is, just please cleanse me of fear that's not my own. So I usually follow with something like that. And then thirdly, I just go to my body. I just ask, where's the healthy fear? So you might feel it in your throat, you might feel it in your gut. Fear is usually lower in the body rather than higher. The brain will race, but the fear sits lower. So if I'm not scared of the scared, I'm going to be able to figure something out. And then I just say, how do I respond? To me, I just do a really simple question. I'm asking my body, and then I obey. I mean, if I feel like lurching forward, going backward, not driving to the left, not going to the grocery store, I need to be in touch with the empathic sense and my trust in my body. Sometimes I might get a picture, sometimes the message, but the body will always tell you, like, don't do that, or drop that, or don't go there. So pause, usually by breathing. That's the easiest, but don't train yourself that you need 28 breaths, because you're not going to have that kind of time. You're just not going to. So pause, go in, and then just say, cleanse, and then what's the healthy fear trying to tell me? And follow it.
Yes. And what you were talking about is the intuition in your gut. Yeah, really listening to your body is using your intuition. So the dangers of unhealthy fear, what does that lead to?
Well, we just talked about one of them. If you stay in unhealthy fear, you get stuck in a stress response. You're just constantly going to be feeling as if something bad just happened. And what often happens is then we trigger our old traumas. Some traumas don't go away. A lot of times when we're under stress and we don't get to process it or deal with it or heal from it, that traumatized self just stays stuck in the body. And so here comes another stress, and she or he pops up and goes, I'm still here. I'm still scared. I'm still mad. I'm still sick. I still hurt. I still ache. So we're going to get a trauma come back up. And sometimes they're not even our traumas, Chris. Sometimes what we trigger are our ancestors' traumas. And I think there's very little understanding of that, but science is starting to shine a light on the fact that we carry at least 14 generations of our ancestors' memories in our body. So am I scared about COVID to the 100th degree? Or did my ancestor go through the Great Depression? And so now I'm really, really nervous. Or did one of them go through the Spanish flu or the Irish potato famine? And so pretty soon, we don't even know who we are in the middle of the fear that is overtaking us.
And 14 generations, 300 years. Are we talking even about the plague?
We're talking about the plague. So guess what we're triggering right now?
Yeah.
I had it happen, when we went into lockdown a few months ago. My first fear was, I don't think I have enough food. But the fear got so big because there's we're fine. We have grocery stores. And I know a lot of people were scared about that. But I took a second and I thought, why is the fear so big? Well, my parents grew up in the Depression, and my dad's family, there wasn't enough food. There actually wasn't. My grandpa couldn't get work after a year or so, and my grandma supported the family by taking in laundry and doing it in their kitchen, the same kitchen my dad had a cot and slept in for the first 10 years of his life. So, they didn't have much food, they didn't have much money, everything was challenging. So there alone would be one of the springboards for the kind of fear I went into, that I had to calm myself down. And I actually sent healing to my ancestors. I just pictured my grandparents, on all four of them, both sides, and just said, to your souls, thank you for what you went through. Thank you for programming me with this sense of urgency. I'm not in the same time. So I send healing to you, and I want to operate in the here and now.
Yeah. So, and a lot of people, this is probably far-fetched for them, but I think there is information in our DNA, cellular memory, that does impact us in ways we just aren't aware of. Now, my family, my mother's parents, that they were farmers, so they had food, but they lost, I think, 2 kids around the time of the Spanish flu. It never was said Spanish flu, but there was sort of talk of the influenza. And so my guess is, and so losing, and another child all of a sudden from something, losing 3 children at a young age impacts, 3 out of 7 children. And you don't think about that, but the trauma and the pain of that for my grandmother, and it impacted my mother and her sister. I remember my aunt saying, or someone telling us that they didn't get Christmas. There was a lack of joy in the family. They didn't get Christmas presents, or they didn't, that I wasn't aware of, because they don't talk about it.
Well, it wasn't that the way that they don't talk about it. Yes. I know stories from my mother, because when she was 87, she published a book with stories about growing up in the North Dakota prairie during the Great Depression. And so that gave me great insight on her side. They were farmers also, to what they went through. And they too had food because they were farmers. But there were years they lost the crops because of locusts and black flies and different diseases. So many generations have had this real tentative hold on, you said it yourself a few minutes ago, on life and death. I mean, we can feel very close to death during a time like this, because we see the counts going up. We know that people are dying from this. We might believe we're healthy, but we don't know how healthy. The virus mutates. There's so much out of our control. I think a lot of it is about uncertainty, and we're not in control.
Right. Yeah. The uncertainty and not knowing how long we're going to go through this. And now, there's talk of, well, they say, 2021 we'll have the vaccine. But then there's talk, no, it takes 3-4 years to really develop a vaccine. And when is it really going to be safe? I mean, in my point of view, I'm not going to be the first one to go out and take the vaccine. We're going to want it to be effective and safe to take and all that. And so there's all this unknown, and that does I have to say I'm staying pretty steady, but I'm not going into the fear of it, but I can understand people going there. And it's more of the anxiety of how long are we going to go through this? Now, summer's great. We can be outside. I can have a couple of people in my backyard safely. We take lots of walks, but is this going to go on in the winter or I'm going to be inside more? And then I'm going to get, and generally, yeah, I'm home a lot anyway, but there's kind of a lack of choice that impacts me. This lack of choice of being able to go do something if I want to on the spur of a moment.
Yes, and that leads to anger. I was just reading some studies that now anger is up, and we know it is with the racial protests. And there's a message in anger too. Anger can be very appropriate and powerful and important because anger says we need a better boundary. Like if I'm angry at somebody, either I need to set a better boundary for myself or in regard to them. So with racial injustice, we need better boundaries. We need to shift the boundaries. But when people have anger and it's not really logical or it's just spewed all over the place, I think you're getting at it. It's that lack of control, that lack of power, that sense that we don't know what's going to go on. We don't know the rules. I think that's why people fight about the masks. Is it really about the masks? I don't think it's about the masks. I think it's sort of that I want to make decisions because I can't decide how long we're not going to be safe. I can't figure out what plans I can make or not. So I'm going to find something that I can feel a little bit more powerful about. And so we pick small things when I think the fear is really the big things. And the anger is about what we can't do.
Right. And being told you have to wear a mask. And then we have this so much this uh, um, independence in our nature of Americans, how dare you tell me I can't, and just even seeing women act out. It's amazing when you read stories in the news, like, wow, here in the Northwest, people are pretty sane. They're wearing masks and now it's ordered any place indoors, you have to wear a mask. And so stores can kick you out, but then you don't know how people are going to react.
I know. I'm in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, and we're very Norwegian. So we tend to be very placid and rule followers, and almost everybody wears one. But I was at the holiday station a few weeks ago, and somebody came up right behind me. He didn't have a mask. I could feel his breath and smell it. And I wanted to say, will you please back up? But I was scared. I was like, you know what? I don't need to be punched. I don't. You can tell sometimes the energy coming off of somebody that they're in defiance and they're just waiting to get challenged. I don't need to be that person. When I was growing up, I was defiant. I was the one who said no, or I don't want to do this. And now I'm sort of like, I'm just going to obey the rules. I'm going to do the right thing. And I'm going to kind of keep my head tucked under because I want to be safe.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, it's an interesting time. So in your book, you actually have some healing or energy techniques to safeguard yourself from getting COVID. And it would be great to share that at this point.
Yes, that'd be great. So these are subtle energy techniques because I think that we have to do whatever we can physically. Eat healthy, do your vitamin C, your vitamin D, get sleep. I mean, we're physical beings, so there's a lot we can be accountable to ourselves for taking care of our bodies. So I know I'm really careful about what I'm eating, and I don't want to gain the COVID-19 pounds or whatever it might be. There's a couple techniques that I teach. The first is recognizing that we have an energy field, and it's the external part of us that interacts with other people, and that we have layers and layers to this field. Some of it is measurable, it's electromagnetic and it's sound, but most of it's immeasurable, it's subtle energy. But measurable or subtle, it's programmed by what we hold inside of us, and we can program our energy field. We can literally put stuff in our energy field to destroy the virus, or at least the energetics of the virus, if we come in contact with us, or to give us a warning, like, don't go this way, go that way, if we maybe could come in contact with somebody. Or I think of it like we're the sun, and nothing gets into the core of the sun. It just burns it all up before it gets there. So two techniques I like to teach people. One is the easiest way to do subtle protection anyway. it's just visualize your own core. I mean, you're a light. I don't care what color you are as an essence, but we're all an essence, and we're strongest in our core. That's where we mix with whatever people want to call the one or the greatness or the Holy Spirit or whatever word we use. So we're sort of like these beautiful little mini suns deep in our core, in the center of our heart, in the center of our energy centers. So every so often I focus there, and I give permission for me, that light with the greater light, to just beam out. Again, yeah, and you can feel it right now, because as there's that beaming and radiance, you do turn into a star or a sun, and you have a greater chance of releasing and healing negative programs that could make you vulnerable to getting the virus, and just kind of zapping the energetics of the virus as well. So that's one technique that I like. The second one is sort of geeky. I really like it, and I think it works quite well. It's based on recent scientific research into crystals. So science is now programming the atoms in crystals. So they can take a regular crystal, you know, like a quartz or this or that or the other thing, and they can program it so it can go off in a certain space, or it can be turned into what they call a time crystal or a space-time crystal. I mean, this sounds like science fiction, but they're doing this in the lab. So you can technically program a crystal that every 3 minutes it's going to emit like a virus reducing or killing sound. So you zap it that way. You could program a crystal to, you know, to kind of with that space, you know, sort of idea that anytime it comes in contact with it, it's going to, you know, kind of emit a certain tone or color that's going to evaporate it. You know, same with time, that every, you know, 24 hours, oh, I think I explained the time one first, every 24 hours or every 3 minutes or whatever, you know, is going to take care of your own issues or any toxins that you have, or evaporate any of the viral load that's in your vicinity. So I envision, you know, I meditate, not for long, it doesn't take long, image tiny little crystals, and allow myself or guides to literally like almost cast them into my energy field, programmed with space and time. Programmed so anytime I'm around the virus or the idea of it, or I'm thinking I might get it, zap. Program it in a time-based fashion that every few minutes it goes off and just protects me from the, again, the idea of getting the virus as well as the virus itself. That's my very favorite technique. I've had people with the virus use that technique, and they program those little subtle crystals with energy to heal them from the virus, and they get well really quickly. So these are subtle energies. You're creating them. We create subtle energies all the time. So why not create some that are going to work for you?
Right. And I think you can attract this kind of, you know, even I think about colds and things that I can attract something, or I can ward it off. Like I know when I can sense, I need to work on this, and I don't let it in. It's almost like a barrier.
Exactly.
I do not let it in.
And don't you think some of that is the power of decision? It's
Mhm.
just, some of it is just no. I actually had COVID-19. I actually had it. I was traveling a lot with my youngest son for college baseball, and we were everywhere that nobody knew the virus already was. Okay. So we were in Hawaii, California, I think Seattle, Colorado, Florida. And right after we were done with somewhere, we would, you know, maybe a week after, we'd hear that the counts were going up of the virus, and nobody was really taking the test. So nobody has any idea what the counts really were. So we both came home from our 5th trip. He went to school and I was here. And I woke up a day or two after getting home, and I just felt horrible. I was like, this is not normal. Nobody was telling you what the symptoms were yet for COVID-19, but they weren't normal flu bugs. I thought if I go to a doctor, which they might not even want to see me, they're just going to tell me I have the flu. I knew it wasn't the flu. I knew it because the aching, the headache, the diarrhea, the weird taste or non-taste in my mouth. I briefly thought to myself, I think I have COVID. But before I could finish the statement in my head, I said, I don't care what it is. I don't want it. I'm not I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. I don't care what the label is. I think labels make a difference sometimes. I think it's important to know what you have if you need treatment. I think sometimes it's important to just say, whatever it is, I'm not going to label it because then I'm probably more prone to get sicker. I said, I don't want it. And by the next day, I woke up and I didn't have the symptoms except for tiredness. So not that I'm a perfect specimen of health, but I was adamant. I don't want this. I want to be done. And I do have antibodies. I tested the antibodies about a month and a half. Yeah, my son kept saying, we never had it, Mom. We didn't have it. I go, yeah, we had it. We had very different symptoms. He was much sicker for long. And I said, we had it, Gabe. We had it. He goes, no, we didn't, Mom. That's just your brain. That's just your intuition. I go, well, my intuition says we had it. We both have antibodies. So
that's interesting. Yeah, you have proof there. I've had a COVID test. I didn't have it, but I had all sorts of symptoms. I had a sore throat. I had, I don't know, I had various symptoms for like 6 weeks, and it kind of was allergies. But I had a COVID test and I did not have it. So there was other stuff going on. So you just didn't know. But the fact that you had, tested and you had the antibodies, and I didn't have the feeling I knew. I just wondered, because this is
exactly
a long time. And I don't usually have allergies that bother me, but they did. They really did. So yeah. And having that fear that, am I going to get COVID, can just lead you down that path of attracting it. And that's the energy of things. Now, one of the things you talked about too is cutting the cord, the energetic cord, and you also do that in other techniques in your book of I think in releasing probably ancestor things or other people's fears or whatever illnesses or whatever is going on. That the energetic cord. Talk about that.
Yeah. So when we inherit a problem or a trauma, when we go through a trauma, frequently what we stay bonded to the ancestors, we stay bonded to the perpetrator, we stay connected to others where that we went through an addictive family system with, because there are energetic attachments that can form. They look like garden hoses, and through them energy passes, subtle energy. And so we can literally have our life energy, our healthy energy, taken to go to somebody else, because that was the unconscious agreement maybe we made during a situation. It's not our fault. This is just how we live as humans. And we can potentially, through that same sort of a bond, it's like an electrical wire, take on from them, well, their illnesses. We can take on their problems. We can take on their beliefs. We can take on their anything, their fear. So we want to not have cords. I think sometimes our soul, our inner self believes if we have an attachment, we're connected. This is how we're going to be loved, right? Or that's the only way we knew that we were loved, but it's not a healthy type of love. In fact, I had an interesting experience several years ago where between 10 p.m. and midnight, almost every night for several years, I woke up with arrhythmia, with tachycardia, with an uneven heartbeat. And I went to cardiologist. You don't have a problem. I went here, I went there. I did de-stress techniques, anti-anxiety, didn't do caffeine, which you don't do caffeine at night anyway, but I did all this stuff. And I finally called my mother one of those nights because I was scared, because it's scary when your heart's out of control. And she was drinking, and I'm allergic to alcohol. Guess what happens if I drink alcohol? I get an uneven heartbeat. And then I figured out other relatives of mine in different corners of the United States were also drinking during those hours. So I had attachments to them because I grew up in an alcoholic family system, and I don't like drinking. I don't choose to do it. I don't care if people have, drink a glass of wine. That's not what I'm talking about. But I think my dislike of the alcohol because of the system is so high that my immune system literally attacks alcohol. It attacks it. I go into this huge panic if I have a sip. I wasn't drinking, but I had these cords or attachments. And what my family members were doing, it was the subtle energy of the alcohol came into my body as if I was drinking, almost an unconscious way for me to help them, to give them support and to take on the alcohol so they would want it less. And I did just release those cords. I used light, I used energy. I said, bless them. I'm not their healer. It's not my job to judge them. This is not my task. I'm not going to play God. And then I only had about 40% of the arrhythmia left, which was another issue, an energetic issue that was also a cord. But by the time I ended those two cords and those two dysfunctional patterns, I was fine. I was healed without doing anything else physically.
And these are such unknown things. I mean, because they're not, we so believe, humanity is like, we've got to see it to believe it. And what you're talking about, so a lot of people can go, oh, phew, that's ridiculous. You can't see it. How could she possibly? And yet, and a lot of people who work in energy understand those kind of connecting cords and how they impact us. And the fact that we don't have to take them on. We've been doing it since birth. I mean, we're probably conditioned as babies.
It's automatic. Well, and you can't see the hurricane on the effects of the hurricane, right? You only see what's in the wind. You don't see an invention before somebody makes it in 3D. You don't see the effects of an idea. Well, you don't see the idea, you see the effects of an idea. So if you really think about it, there's an awful lot that we believe is real and concrete and true, but we don't really see it. We can't really touch it. Our brains sooner or later wrap around the fact that it's real, but if you pull back, we have to really wonder how much of reality is actually 3D, can be proven, and how much is here because it came out of the invisible. Everything came out of the invisible. I mean, the body, the physical body, the zygote comes out of invisible energy. Sure, there's a sperm and an egg, but then it's sort of like, okay, now there's a baby. Now there's an embryo. Isn't that weird? So there's some unknown factors that I think some people don't like to think about them because it's so much easier to deal with what we call concrete. Mm-hmm. But science also says that 99.99% of an object, guess what, is invisible. It's not concrete.
Right. It's a space between the
cells or whatever. The atoms and the quanta and absolutely everything else. And it's not even really that much there. It's sort of everywhere.
Right. So, and so some of the things you were talking about is absorbing other people's energies, absorbing the fears. And so, is there any other techniques you use to help people with that? Because I think a lot of people, they're sponges. They don't realize, they kind of take on other people's energies.
Yeah, I think some of it is to watch yourself, sense yourself, analyze yourself for maybe a week or two. If you feel like you have that issue that you're absorbing, you probably do. If you're like a human sponge, you already know it. And so I think it's helpful to first define how you're absorbing. So some people are physical empaths. They literally feel in their body the senses in somebody else's body. So if somebody has a knee pain, they get a knee pain. If somebody else has a cold, they automatically feel like they have a cold. You go to a movie, not that we can go to movies anymore, but you look at the television, and if somebody's, pushing a sword into their enemy, you feel like the sword is going into you. That's physical empathy. And so that's one type of empathy. Some people are feeling empaths. They sense everybody's emotions. A less definable type of empathy is mental empathy. That's like your gut. That's when you just sort of, I'm sorry, I thought I turned my phone on, but there's like God calling to help us here with this, right? So mental empathy is when you bring into your system what somebody else knows. So you get a really strong gut sense. You get this sort of clear knowledge, and you'll know when somebody's lying or not, or what their motivations are. So that one can trip people up. And there's also spiritual empathy, where it's kind of an order above mental empathy. And you have awareness. It's sort of like you're the divine and you know what the divine knows. You know if somebody's lying, you know who they really are, you know if they're supposed to be doing what they're doing for a living. And all of these are good skills and tools to have, but not if it's eroding your own life, not if it's interfering with your own way of being. So again, let's go back to the power of decision to say, I don't want to do this anymore. I want my body. I want my feelings. I want my knowing. I want my conscious awareness. And I only want to be aware of others. I don't want to have their issues, their feelings, their energy in my body. So there's a lot of techniques, but they still start with making a decision.
Mm-hmm. Is there any technique that you would like to go through as an ending of how to deal with maybe whatever is coming up in your life in the moment?
Yes. So there's actually 2 techniques that I think are helpful that I use all the time. One I call spirit to spirit, and it's a way of bringing yourself into yourself, being your higher self, connecting, and then getting clear when it's time to make decisions. It's very easy. It really just involves first understanding and affirming your own essence. So you can just try it right now. Just affirm, you know what? I'm an immortal soul. I'm an immortal spirit. I'm just going to come from that place. And you can immediately feel yourself settle down, like you're just in yourself. If you're going to engage with somebody else, or if you feel like you took on somebody else's energy, you simply acknowledge the essence of the other. You can do that with spiritual guides. You can do that for other people, but you're just sort of tapping into the best part of who they are. And then the third step is just to kind of turn your process over to whatever you would call your greater spirit. I don't care if you're religious, it doesn't matter. It can be goodness, the oneness, your own higher self, because that's where you want to get your guidance. And that's the essence, that's the sacredness that you want to have define your boundaries. So that's what I do. And I automatically almost always feel boundaries when I go through those 3 steps. Feel my spirit, acknowledge other spirits, and ask for help from a greater spirit. And then at that point, if I feel like I need more, I believe there's energies of grace. It's just love in motion. They're really scalar waves if you're a science geek that are always in the universe. And all you have to do is ask for them. Just say, I need grace. I need healing streams of light. I need energies to cleanse me, protect me, wrap around me, help me, guide me. You only have to ask and they're yours. Mm-hmm. So those are the 2 processes I use in my everyday life and with clients consistently. That's really all I do most of the time.
Well, thank you so much for your work. And I recommend people getting the book, which again is, I'm going to, where's the list of the books?
It's energy healing for trauma, stress, and chronic illnesses.
Great. And it's just out this month.
For energy healing.
Pardon?
Just came out. It's on Amazon. It just came out. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So it's really about energy healing for trauma, which we're pretty much all being impacted by that right now. So it's a perfect timing. And there's lots of information there about how the body works, physical and subtle bodies. And then all the techniques that you offer in the book too. So you're learning a lot, and then you're more than I ever knew about the body, and then techniques of how to heal yourself. Yes. So that's great. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. It was fun to reconnect. Thank you so much.